Good afternoon. I want to address a point I often see. Many atheists will make the claim there's no evidence for God and no evidence for Christianity, and meanwhile, evidential apologists such as myself will make the opposite claim. So, which is correct? Well, I think this issue comes down to two separate problems. I'm going to discuss just the first one, and that is the tendency to confuse evidence with argumentation. Now, oftentimes in issues of epistemology, that is our discussion of belief and knowledge, courtrooms provide us with a useful test bed for principles and other things. In a trial, a jury does not consider the prosecution's evidence as a body and then the defense's evidence as a body. They are instead given the evidence. Now, during the evidentiary phase of a trial, some of that evidence is introduced by the prosecution. The prosecution has their witnesses, and then the defense they are not required to bring their witnesses, and they will bring in their evidence. They will also cross-examine the prosecution witnesses and possibly introduce some evidence during that phase. But that's the evidentiary phase of the trial. At the close of the evidentiary phase, when the defense says the defense rests, and if the prosecution has no rebuttal case to the defense's case, then the judge will read the jury the instructions, and you will have final arguments. And during the arguments, the prosecution will look at the evidence, and he is limited to what has already been introduced into evidence, and make his arguments as to why his theory of the case is correct and should be believed beyond a reasonable doubt. The defense, meanwhile, will try and make this argument from the evidence, and again, they cannot introduce something that is not in evidence during their final arguments, and will make the case as to why either the prosecution hasn't made their case, why there is a better suspect, etc. That's the way a trial works. You have the evidence, and then you have the arguments. Well, that is also what happens in worldview debates. We have evidence and we have arguments, and oftentimes the evidence is the same, and the question is, what are the theories we use to explain them? And so the type of argumentation we should be engaging in is why my case is better than his case. Now, there's a further issue we will deal with, but I think this is the first thing we need to understand. We're all working with the same evidence. Now, the atheist says this is evidence for evolution. I say this is evidence for creation, which is correct. Well, that is in and of itself the argument. Thank you. Bye.